Hello, Stormwater designers. Welcome back to Clear Creek Solutions hydrology education videos. It's another video in our Hydrology 101 series. I think we're on video 12 or 13 at this point. We're going over quantitative hydrology in this one. You can download our free hydrology terms guides. It's 3 to 4 pages of basic and some advanced hydrology and hydrologic terms that you can download, you can look at, and you can review. If you're in class or if you're somewhere else and you want to learn some of these terms, it's a 100% free guide. Just go to the link down below and you can download that hydrology terms guide. It's great for reference. Now let's get into the lesson. So we'll start off with an introduction here. So hydrologists may find stream flow records at the site of a proposed project. So let's say we had a proposed project location. Acquiring those stream flow records is going to be very important at the project site, and often the nearest available record is elsewhere on the stream data. Hydrologists must be prepared to transfer this data they acquire that is available to the problem area with adequate adjustments. So oftentimes when we get this stream data, it may not 100% be able to apply or work with some other projects that are set up or make 100% sense when you're thinking about the project constraints. So we need to be able to adjust this data and factor it so it makes sense within our project situation. The engineer must judge the difference between the two drainage basins. So if we have two different drainage basins with maybe different stream data, and one's much higher than the other or much lower, or there's different fluctuations, we need to be able to make adjustments to the data with our engineering judgment. There's a lot of judgment in engineering. It's not 100% we have data and we just roll with it. You need to be able to make judgment decisions in order to best model your project. Because as much as hydrology is, of course, a science and engineering, there's an art form to it and a judgment to it that helps us make the best projects possible. And methods have been developed to make up for this time and space adjustments. So sometimes there's time differences, there's space differences in this data, and so some methods have been developed to make this easier. So let's talk about basin recharge and runoff. As rain falls towards the earth, a portion of it is intercepted by the leaves and stems of vegetation. When we talked about the hydrologic cycle, we went over this quite a bit, but as the precipitation is going to fall, a portion of that is going to be intercepted by the natural vegetation in the area. So if you think about rainfall falling on a desert where there's not a lot of natural vegetation, not a lot of that water is going to be intercepted. But if there's a bunch of trees and you're in a forested area, a lot more of that water is going to be intercepted by the local wildlife, and it's going to be using that water. So the retained water, which is referred to as interception, together with depression storage and soil moisture, constitutes basin recharge. So everything that has to do with basin recharge is all that intercepted water, some of the depression storage in the environment, and how much soil moisture the vegetation can hold. So when we get some more rain and more of that natural vegetation is able to acquire that water and retain it, that interception, that's what we're talking about when we refer to basin recharge. And usually that's a time number, how long does it take and how much rainfall to get that basin recharge. So the portion of precipitation that does not contribute to the stream flow or the inner flow is groundwater. And the depression storage includes the water retained as puddles and surface depression, so that's pretty self-explanatory. So when we're talking about precipitation, what doesn't act as stream flow or inner flow is going to eventually go even deeper into the soil and become groundwater. So soil moisture is held as capillary water in the smaller pore spaces of the soil, or as hygroscopic water absorbed on the surface of soil particles. And rainwater or melting snow, exclusive of the water withheld as basin recharge, may follow 3 paths to a stream. We've gone over this, but we'll review it again. And a portion travels as overland flow across the ground surface to the nearest channel. Still, other water may infiltrate into the soil and flow laterally in the surface soil to a stream channel as inner flow. So the water has to go somewhere. It's going to flow as either surface flow, that inner flow, or that groundwater. It has to flow as one of those, and it's going to flow to the nearest outlet. So a relatively impermeable stratum in the subsoil favors the occurrence of inner flow. So if the water is not able to infiltrate much lower, and this can happen in different soil types, it's going to have to run off as inner flow and that surface flow. A third portion of the water may percolate downward through the soil until it reaches the groundwater, but depending on your soil type, that could either happen really quickly or take quite a long time to happen. So vertical percolation of rainwater results in groundwater accretion only if the soil is highly permeable or if the groundwater is near the surface. So if your groundwater table is very high, obviously the water is going to get to the groundwater very quickly, or if the percolation is quite high. So if you have using AB type soils, that infiltrate well, it's going to get to the groundwater faster than if you're using something like glacial till, for example, where there's a very hard impermeable layer. It's very hard to get to that groundwater level. Low soil permeability encourages overland flow, while a thick soil mantle, even though permeable, may return so much water as soil moisture that little will reach the groundwater. And this is what I was talking about. AB soils infiltrate easily, and so there's going to be some overland flow, but then a lot of it's going to become groundwater. But if you have something like glacial till, a lot of it's going to be interflow runoff, and not a lot of that's going to reach the groundwater. So it's convenient, although inaccurate, to discuss recharge and runoff as if runoff began only after recharge of the basin was complete. These things often happen simultaneously, and this is what continuous simulation hydrology, which we've gone over, is about in terms of modeling this entire hydrologic cycle. While the potential rate of recharge is at maximum at the beginning of a storm, recharge normally continues at decreasing rates while the storm lasts. And then the condition of complete saturation, all moisture storage capacity is fully used. And so the distinction between the three kinds of runoff is a bit artificial and often based on judgment. So the difference between surface flow, interflow, and groundwater, we have to use once again our hydrologic judgment to figure out what each of those three are. And so when we're talking about the top bullet point there, to discuss recharge as runoff and runoff begin only after recharge, all these things are happening continuously. They do not happen one step and then this step. All these things happen in the natural environment at different rates. So water that starts as surface runoff may become groundwater or interflow eventually because it's starting at the surface, but may vertically percolate over time. And overland flow and interflow are frequently grouped together as direct runoff. The water reaches the stream shortly after it falls as rain and is discharged from the drainage basin in a few days. So this is quickly going to drain from the surface. If you think about, we have hydrology models that we use here. One is called wwhm 2012. A lot of the times when we're thinking about runoff with our glacial till, only overland flow and interflow are included in the relevant runoff because that's going to drain much quicker and usually in a few days. Most river basins contain streams that fall into both categories, and some streams may be either influent or effluent depending upon the rate of flow in existing groundwater levels. So if we think about this, here's the water flow chart again. We think about the precipitation, the runoff, and then we getting some of that surface runoff, and that water is eventually going to become condensation, evaporation, and transpiration, but a lot of that will run off. If we look at this chart here, we can see the amount of that's interflow, the amount of that's surface runoff, and then the very, very low amounts are groundwater. We're going to go over how hydrographs represent this in the next lesson. So you can see that there's a lot of factors determining how much runoff we're getting and how stream flows are measured. And we have to take all these factors into consideration as hydrologists and use our judgment to best determine the stream flows. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson. You can download our free hydrology terms guide in the description down below, and we'll see you guys next time.